Hi, I'm Emma. I'm Conservation Officer with Saving Scotland's Red Squirrels in the northeast of Scotland. So I'll tell you a little bit first of all about myself and the northeast team. We're based in Aberdeen City and work in Aberdeen City and Shire. There's myself, the Conservation Officer. We have a Monitoring and Control Officer and two full-time grey squirrel officers. And then we have grey squirrel control volunteers, Dave and Bill, and we have 42 rapid response monitoring volunteers now, and we have 13 autumn survey volunteers. We also have around 48 at the moment householders with traps in their gardens. We call you trap loanees, and over the lifetime of the project there's actually been more than 300 households altogether having traps in their gardens. So we are a fairly big team in the northeast, all working towards a common goal. So a little bit about the northeast and why it is unique in terms of Scottish squirrel populations. So the rest of the UK populations are connected and genetically mixed. Aberdeen is considered an island population because it's isolated from the rest of the British population of squirrels. In fact, the population of grey squirrels in Aberdeen are all descendants of escapees from Hazelhead Zoo in the 1970s. There were only 10 to 20 individuals to begin with, and they escaped on their first night in Hazelhead Zoo. And every grey squirrel in Aberdeen, as far as we know, is a descendant of those. So it took a few decades for them to breed prolifically and to take over Aberdeen City and parts of the Shire. So a genetic study by Lisa Sinreilly a few years ago confirmed that the Aberdeen population are different to the rest of the country. They're all closely related to each other, and their closest relatives are not down in the nearby populations in Tayside, for example, or the Central Belt. They're actually down near the New Forest. So it's an example of how prolifically grey squirrels breed and why they're considered one of the world's worst invasive species. On a positive note, there's no squirrelpox virus in the population in Aberdeen, but I put in brackets yet in capitals because, as you will see, unfortunately, the population from further south in the country are steadily making their way north towards Aberdeen. Our goal is to eradicate this island population. So we'll talk a bit more about that later. Here's a look at, over the lifetime of the DCA project, what has changed in terms of grey squirrel distribution. So the blue circles are grey squirrel records. So we have in 2016, pre-DCA, you can see the population is spread out along the Don beyond Inverary actually, and then along the Dee beyond Bankery and down past Westhill in between the two. And fast forward to 2021, so as you can see, there are some smaller satellite populations with the main city population that we are dealing with on an ongoing basis. But in general, the population is now contained within Aberdeen City. These are grey squirrel records in the city, again comparing on the left 2016 pre-DCA and 2021 coming to the end of it, and you can see the population indeed are more contained. They have a smaller range and they are in much lower densities than they would have been 5 years ago, which is really great progress. And this is another way of illustrating it's our trapping effort. So the dark green boxes are the tetrads with the highest intensity of trapping and the lightest with the lowest. So you can see in 2016, pre-developing community action, the effort was spread out well out into Aberdeenshire, and again now it's really, really focused in the city. You'll also see, if you look to the south on the 2021 map, that there is trapping effort trying to contain the population moving up from the south as well. This is just a map of our trap loan scheme. So from the first 4 years of the DCA project, you can see we've had traps throughout Aberdeen City and into the Shire as well. And then this year in 2021, everything again, as you can see, is really focused in on the city and some further south as well. Red squirrel distribution doesn't look like there's a huge difference between 2016 and 2021, But the difference is really in Aberdeen City. It's really, really noticeable. So we have red squirrels now in Aberdeen city parks. Of course, there's Hazelhead Park, which was one of the first city parks to be recolonised by red squirrels a long time ago. Probably 10 years ago now, they started coming back there. About 5, 6 years ago, we had Seaton Park, our first red squirrels there. Now in 2021, we've had our first red squirrels in Victoria Park and Westburn Park, which is really exciting. So really good evidence that, yeah, contrary to pretty popular belief that red squirrels don't do cities, they do. We just need to make sure that there aren't any grey squirrels there, and red squirrels actually can do cities really well. And here's a look at our monitoring. So 2017 to 2019, the first 3 years of the DCA project, we had an annual spring survey, which was project wide, as Mel will have told you about. This obviously didn't go on in 2020 or 21 because of COVID. So we have 3 years of spring survey in the lifetime of this project. And then we had several years of an autumn survey as well. So these surveys took place over a period of about 6 weeks, with 3 or 4 visits to feeders by volunteers and by staff. So how that has changed now, we're looking at, these are 2020 and 2021. So our autumn survey is greatly reduced now, and does include monitoring in the south as well as in the city. And our rapid response monitoring program, which is the guts of really what we are doing now in Aberdeen City and what we're moving towards doing even more extensively. So basically, rather than doing full trap rounds, which are very time consuming, and they are required when there are higher density populations, obviously, but at lower density, it is actually much more time efficient to monitor all the areas where grey squirrels may be detected, to monitor them very, very frequently. And as soon as a grey squirrel is detected, then we can go in with an alarmed trap, a mink police trap, and trap there as soon as there is a detection at a feeder or at a trail cam. So if you're interested in hearing more about how our trap boxes and the mink police units that we use in the trap boxes, make sure that you attend James Kennedy's Trapping and Tech workshop, which is on tomorrow as far as I know. So I'll leave him to talk to you about that in more detail. But here, this shows you our feeder locations in Aberdeen City on the right there. And we have an army of volunteers that are checking these feeders every 2 weeks. And as soon as there is a grey squirrel detected, we go in there. One of the members of the team goes in there and traps with an alarmed trap box. So, as you know, our goal in Aberdeen City is to eradicate this island population. And briefly, what the route to eradication looks like for us. Well, there are 6 guiding principles to eradication, and we try to base all of the work that we do and what we're working towards on these principles. The first one is that all individuals must be at risk, which is tricky, especially in an urban environment, where there will always be some issues with land access, and not everybody is going to allow us onto their land to trap. So we also need to increase the coverage. So from the coverage that we've had historically, that can improve, and there are many, many smaller habitat patches that are suitable for squirrels and for draying, and that we need to get in and trap as well. The GPS study results will be really helpful. So you may have heard that in collaboration with the University of the Highlands and Islands, we put GPS collars on 10 grey squirrels in March. So that study was led by Louise Durad and her team from Inverness College, and there is a master's student, Devon Fitzpatrick, who has started in October, who's going to be analysing all of the GPS collar data and hopefully telling us some really important information about how grey squirrels use the urban landscape. And hopefully that will allow us to become more efficient and targeted in our efforts. So if you want to hear more about the GPS study, make sure you attend Devon's talk later on today. That should be really interesting. So one thing to point out as well, though, in terms of all individuals being at risk, we only have one method, and that is trapping. We don't shoot in Aberdeen City. It isn't possible. So there will be some squirrels that will not go into a trap or will take a very, very, very long time to get into a trap, and some that won't at all. So that does violate the assumption or the principle, should I say, that all individuals must be at risk. It would be ideal if we had another method, and for example, something like a gene drive, which may be available in a few years and may actually be suitable within the Aberdeen Island population, could be extremely, extremely useful on our route to eradication. Next, animals must be removed at a rate exceeding their rate of increase. And this is true at all densities. So this is true even at low densities. And it means that there is the law of diminishing returns, really. As densities decrease, the amount of effort needed to trap an individual squirrel increases. But we still need to keep the foot on the pedal and make sure that we're removing animals at a rate exceeding their rate of increase. Thirdly, non-target animals risk must be minimized or mitigated, and this is something that we really comfortably meet, which is great. So there is no risk to red squirrels. They do use the feeders, obviously. They also go into traps. They quite like our traps, but all of our traps are checked twice per day, and unless they're alarmed, and then they're checked as soon as the alarm goes off. And as neither species of squirrel is in a trap for more than a few hours, really. Unfortunately, red squirrels, some of them become trap happy, get quite a kick out of it. And actually, an issue is that you might have 5 red squirrels in an area and 1 grey squirrel that you're trying to trap. And some of those red squirrels spend so much time in the trap that it becomes very difficult to actually catch the grey squirrel because the trap is being hogged by red squirrels. So that's one of the obstacles that we're continuously trying to come up with ideas to overcome it. So if you do have any suggestions to how to deter a red squirrel from a trap, please let us know. The fourth one is don't educate target animals to eradication techniques, and this is probably more important in eradications where bait is being used, but it is important as well with traps. You don't want to have your trap set poorly where the animal figures out what's happening or that they don't want to go in there, that trigger the trap before they've fully gone in, and then realize that's not somewhere that I'm going to go again. Immigration must be effectively zero. So this is a major issue with grey squirrels coming up from the south, and I'm going to talk to you about that in more detail later, but that's probably the biggest risk to the Aberdeen city eradication at the moment. Local regulatory, social and economic conditions must be conducive to meeting rules 1 to 5, and aside from there being some issues with not gaining access to land that we need to get into in a timely manner to trap grey squirrels, other than that happening occasionally, we meet this principle as well and have great support from all of our project partners. So now looking at the south in the Mearns, those orange dots are our feeders. So there's well over 100 feeders, and there's 15 volunteers that every 2 weeks go out and check those feeders to see whether there have been red or grey squirrels visiting them. And this has been set up in the last year, basically because their grey squirrels are moving up from the south. It's excellent habitat for grey squirrels. Really well connected, lovely nice corridors for movement, and lovely blocks of woodland as well. So really ideal habitat, really well connected, great place to move along through quite quickly. There have been no pine marten records ever east of the A90 between the river North Esk and Inverbervie east of the A90, which is obviously makes the habitat even more hospitable for grey squirrels. Unfortunately, we've had multiple grey sightings there annually since 2015, and I'm going to show you now how these sightings have come in. So we had a few in 2015, we had 3. In 2016, we had more. In 2017, we did more up around Edsall and quite a few in Lawrencekirk. Then in 2018, we had more in Lawrencekirk. We had St. Cyrus, we had Lauriston and Johnshaven, and in 2019, and we had Benham in 2019. Inglismaldy, Marykirk, St Cyrus, Johnshaven, Benham, and even north of Inverbervie in 2020, and then another one in Capo, which is right on the boundary of the North Esk in 2021. So there's been 27 sightings over the last 6 years. And in 2020 to 21, we got landowner permissions for, well, everywhere. You can see that there are feeders there, which was a huge task. We recruited and trained 15 volunteers, and we set up 4 householder trap loans as well. There have been 10 grey squirrels removed to date. A huge amount of effort has gone into trapping those 10 grey squirrels. They are very low density. Some of them are on the move. Some of them are not on the move actually, and have set up residence and are breeding. So we put a huge amount of effort into catching those grey squirrels. But like you saw in my earlier slides, Aberdeen's grey squirrel population started between 10 and 20 squirrels. So we've got at least that in the Marns. We have removed 10 of them, but there are definitely still some more out there that we've detected and have been unable to trap. And there's continuous risk because they're connected. They're just it's a connected population, and they're moving up from the south. So there is plenty to celebrate in Aberdeen City. The grey squirrel population continues to shrink, both in range and numbers. Red squirrels have returned to city parks and gardens in this last year, even Victoria and Westburn parks, which is amazing. There had been the odd sighting over the years, but we've had actual hard evidence this year, which is great. Red squirrels are returning to many city gardens, and some of our long-term trapalonees who had traps in their gardens for years and have only ever had grey squirrels started in the last year or two actually seeing their first red squirrels in the garden, and quite a few of them have actually taken the traps back in because now all they have is red squirrels. And that picture on the right is from Aberdeen City, around the Rubislaw area, which was really great to see. 2 red squirrels on a bird feeder there after years of trapping rays in the garden. So that's really, really something to celebrate. We also recruited more than 40 volunteers in between 2020 and 2021, and more of our sites, our trapping sites, are meeting the criteria to move to rapid response monitoring. That means we've got low density populations that we can respond to individual detections. So this is a really, really good sign. And we have collaborations with the University of the Highlands and Islands, the GPS collar study, and we're also collaborating with the University of Copenhagen on the squirrel hologenomics project there as well. For the future, I would say I have some words of hope and some words of caution. The words of hope really relate to our army of volunteers. They'll continue to play a huge role as we move closer to eradication, and this allows the team of professionals to target trapping where it is needed in this ever decreasing density of grey squirrels. So that really is just an amazing thing. We wouldn't be where we are without our volunteers, and we won't get to where we're going without you either. Pine marten populations in Aberdeenshire and surrounding Aberdeen City, in Aberdeen City itself and the outskirts, are increasing, it would seem, and we have lots of records of pine martens in Aberdeen City itself. Excuse me. So I'll be giving a talk on pine martens and squirrels if anyone's specifically interested in that. That'll be later today. But it's really great. It gives us reassurance. There is resilience against grey squirrels, re-establishing outwards if anything were to happen to the project. Not to say that there are parts of the landscape that would still be infiltrated back out into Aberdeenshire, but also many parts of the landscape now where we have good pine marten populations that will offer long-term resilience. Words of caution are invasive rodent eradications require increased efforts toward the later stages. So we can't take our foot off the pedal now. It would really be detrimental to the success of the project. A gap in funding will mean years of work have been wasted, and it won't take long. At this point, it wouldn't take too long for things to go really quite quickly the other way. And the last word of caution is that they are coming from the south, and a sustainable long-term plan is needed to ensure that the population from the south, who are connected to populations that carry disease as well, squirrel pox virus, that they do not continue to spread north to Aberdeen, that they don't get the opportunity to make it and connect with this disease-free population. So that is everything from me. I hope you enjoyed hearing about the Northeast team and where we're at. Thank you everybody for attending. Thank you to all of our partners and to all of our volunteers. There's far too many people that have helped us and that continue to help us to be able to name anybody. So you all know who you are, and thank you very, very much, and enjoy the rest of the day.